It started with a damn text tone I didn't recognize. I was cleaning out the pantry, wiping down old spice jars and tossing expired stuff, when her phone buzzed from the counter. 3 times. Fast. Then once more. She was in the shower upstairs. Normally, I don't look. But this tone, it wasn't her usual chirp. It was something new. Like a default setting no one keeps. I'm Rick. I'm 62. I live in a beige ranch-style house in Palmer, Ohio, just west of Cleveland. Been here 24 years. My wife, well, no. Her name is Julie. She's 59. Still works part-time at a dental clinic while I'm semi-retired after 30 years at the GM plant. We've got a unsaid boy that still smells like popcorn from when the grandkids came over last week. The house is too quiet now. She plays jazz while cooking, and I always hated it, but these days I miss the saxophone whining through the kitchen. Anyway. That day was cold. April pretending to be February. Wind hissing through the front screen like a leaky tire. I'd just come in from the garage, tracking salt dust on the rug. I wiped my boots, cracked a Miller Lite, and started in on the shelves. Then her phone lit up again. Face down on the counter. Screen glowing white through a smudged glitter case. I shouldn't have. I know that. But I did. It wasn't locked. The first message. Still thinking about last weekend. Can't stop. Second. That moment in the elevator. Third. I can't wait to see you again. Tell him you're working late Friday. I stood there frozen. I didn't scroll. Didn't look at the name. Just those 3 messages. They were enough. I stared at the bottle of McCormick Cummin in my hand. Threw it in the trash without thinking. I heard the water stop upstairs. Pipes groaned like always. The house settled around me, and the silence rang so loud I could hear my own breathing. I put her phone back exactly how it was. She came down 10 minutes later, wrapped in a faded Target bathrobe, hair wet and tucked behind her ears. She looked normal. Tired maybe. Her skin flushed from the steam. She smiled. You want Chinese tonight? I don't feel like cooking. I nodded. Said, yeah, sure, like it was any other Thursday. But inside, my stomach was caving in. The rest of the evening passed like we were actors in a play. We watched an old episode of Frasier, shared sesame chicken, and argued half-heartedly about whether the thermostat was set too low. She scrolled Instagram while I rinsed out the containers. I could feel her phone's screen light bouncing off the chrome sink. At 10:03, she kissed my forehead, said, I'm beat, and went upstairs. I stood in the dark kitchen for another half hour. The fridge motor kicked on and off. The wall clock ticked loud enough to notice. I couldn't sleep. At 2:11 a.m., I got up and walked into the garage. Sat in my truck. No keys. No jacket. Just sat there, breathing in the stale smell of old oil, pine air freshener, and something metallic I couldn't place. I wanted to scream. Punch something. Instead, I turned on the dome light and stared at the cracked dashboard. The next morning, she made eggs. Over easy. Toast burned just slightly, the way she likes it. She sipped coffee from the yellow mug with the cracked handle that says Queen Bee in faded font. I watched her. Her fingers trembled when she stirred her creamer. She said nothing. Neither did I. And that's when I knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't a moment of weakness. Something had already happened. Maybe weeks ago. Maybe longer. The worst part? She thought I didn't notice. She thought she was getting away with it. But I did notice. I'd been noticing for months. The new perfume. The trips to train new hires on weekends. The sudden interest in yoga pants and long drives alone. The way she smiled more at her phone than at me. Still, nothing hit like that text. Not the contents. Not even the words. It was the timing. Friday. She was already planning the next one. I walked upstairs, past her damp towel hanging on the railing, and into the guest bedroom. I shut the door. Sat on the edge of the bed. Everything smelled like dust and old laundry detergent. I pulled out the drawer of the nightstand and just sat there staring into it, empty except for a broken charger and a church bulletin from 2 Easters ago. Then I reached for my own phone. Typed. "Who are you texting?" Paused. Deleted it. Typed. "We need to talk." And just stared at it. For a long time. I never hit send. Instead, I hit record. Voice memo. 3:16 long. I said everything I couldn't say out loud. Then saved it. Maybe I'll play it for her one day. Or maybe I won't need to. Because now I had a plan. I didn't sleep that night. Just stared at the ceiling fan in the guest room spinning in slow motion like some dumb metaphor for how stuck I felt. The room smelled like stale linens and that old cedar candle Julie used to burn when our daughter visited. I must have replayed that text message in my head 100 times. "Tell him you're working late Friday." I couldn't get it out of my skull. By 5:40 a.m., I was already downstairs. I didn't want her to see me with bloodshot eyes or the way my hands shook pouring coffee. I made it extra strong and drank it black, even though it tasted like burnt rubber. My stomach was already in knots anyway. Julie came down about 30 minutes later, wrapped in that same robe, hair tied up in a messy bun. She looked surprised to see me awake so early. "You up early," she said, rubbing one eye and yawning. Her voice still hoarse from sleep. "Couldn't sleep," I mumbled. She padded barefoot across the cold tile and grabbed her favorite mug from the cabinet, the Queen Bee one. I watched her pour the coffee I made, add her almond creamer, and stir it like it was just another normal morning. "You okay?" she asked, finally glancing over. I shrugged. "Weird dreams." She just nodded like that explained everything. Then she started scrolling on her phone with one hand, sipping coffee with the other. I watched her fingers move. Her thumb hovered like she was waiting for something. A reply maybe. Or an incoming message. I felt like I was standing behind glass, banging on it, and she couldn't hear me. I was screaming inside, "I know, Julie. I know you're not where you say you are. I know you're talking to someone else." I read it. I saw it. But none of that came out. Instead, I asked, "You heading in early today?" She blinked, looked up like I'd caught her off guard. "Yeah. We've got back-to-back patients this morning. I'll probably skip lunch." Lies, I thought. Probably not even going to the office. I nodded slowly. "Want me to pack you something?" She paused, and for a second, I thought she might say something, anything real. But she just smiled, tight-lipped. "No, it's okay. I'll grab something if I have time." Her phone buzzed in her hand. She turned it slightly, away from my line of sight, and her expression barely shifted. Not quite a smile, not quite panic, just that middle ground people live in when they're hiding something. I excused myself to the garage, claiming I had to fix the snow blower even though we hadn't had snow in weeks. I just needed space. Yeah. I closed the door behind me and sat on the old cracked stool next to my toolbox. The light flickered above, one of those annoying fluorescents I never got around to replacing. It buzzed faintly, like it was mocking me. I pulled out the voice memo from last night and played it back. My voice sounded off. Like someone else. Hello. like a guy trying to keep it together while his entire world turned to ash. I deleted it. Around 10:20 a.m., I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I opened her laptop. It wasn't locked. The last open tab was Google Maps. I clicked through the history. Renaissance Inn, Brook Park, OH. Route navigation from her clinic to the hotel. Yelp page 4 Southside Grill, 2 miles from the Renaissance. I felt a pressure building in my chest like someone was pushing down on me with both hands. My heart was racing. My vision started to blur a little. I backed out, closed the laptop, and sat down in the living room on the lazy boy. The cushions sagged beneath me, still warm from where Julie had been sitting earlier. I rubbed my hands over my face and whispered, "What the hell are you doing to me?" Around noon, she called. "Hey," she said. "Just checking in." I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. "How's work?" I asked flatly. She hesitated. "Busy." Patients stacked up. "Might be home late." "Friday busy too?" "Yeah, why?" she said, her voice tightening just a bit. "No reason," I said. Another pause. You could drive a truck through that silence. "Okay, well, I'll see you tonight," she said quickly. "Yep," I replied. Then she hung up. I sat there for another hour, just staring at the blank TV screen, the reflection of the window cutting across my face like a cracked mirror. Outside, the sky was overcast. One of those gray Cleveland days where everything looks flat and dead. I made a decision. If she was going to lie to my face, I wanted to see the truth with my own eyes. I grabbed an old Moleskine notebook from the junk drawer, scribbled down her recent hotel check-ins from the browser history, and circled Renaissance Inn. She'd been there 3 times in the last 6 weeks. I found my keys. Tossed on my Browns hoodie and old boots. Tossed a half-empty bottle of Tums in the passenger seat. My stomach was on fire. I told myself I was just going for a drive. Just wanted to see something. Anything. But I knew. I was going hunting. Not for confrontation. Not for revenge. For proof. Because knowing and seeing are 2 different animals. And I needed to look this betrayal straight in the eyes. The Renaissance Inn sat just off I-71, right behind an abandoned steak and shake and a faded Sunoco station with 1 working pump. The kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it, which I guess was the point. I pulled into the lot around 2:15 p.m. and parked 2 rows back from the main entrance, angled just enough so I could see the glass doors but not be seen easily. The lot was half full. A white Kia, a grey Civic, a black Suburban with tinted windows. Nothing special. Nothing damning. I sat in my truck, engine off, the cabin cooling down fast as the outside air crept in. Wind rattled the side mirror, and a crushed Sprite can danced across the sidewalk in front of me. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Was I going to walk inside? Ask the front desk if my wife had been here? Show them a picture? That felt crazy. But then again, everything about this was already crazy. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I shoved them under my thighs and stared through the windshield. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then, at exactly 2:37 p.m., I saw her. Julie. She stepped out of the side door with someone. Tall guy. Tan jacket. Balding. Maybe early 50s. She was laughing at something he said. The kind of laugh she used to save for home. Her arm brushed his. Not an accident. Not casual. They walked to the Civic. She got in the passenger seat. He didn't rush. Took his time opening the driver's door. Looked around. I ducked just slightly, heart hammering in my throat. The engine started. The car backed out, turned left, and pulled out of the lot. I waited a full minute before turning the key. Then I followed. Not close. I've seen enough movies to know how this goes. I kept 2, 3 cars behind, sometimes letting a red light separate us. They weren't going far. Just down the block, around the corner, into a Chili's parking lot. Seriously? Chili's? They got out, walked side by side, not touching, not rushing, just casual. Comfortable. Like they'd done this before. Like this wasn't something new. Inside my chest, something gave way. Like a beam snapping under too much weight. I felt hollow. Like the inside of me had been scooped out and replaced with static. I parked across the street, behind a CVS delivery truck. Killed the engine. Pulled out my phone. I didn't know what to do. Call her? Text her? Take a picture? I opened the camera app. Snapped a photo through the windshield. It was blurry. Worthless. I took another. Still useless. My hands weren't steady enough. I sat back and watched them disappear inside. For the next 45 minutes, I stared at that Chili's sign, red letters glowing dim against the grey afternoon sky. I remembered the last time we'd eaten there. It was 5 years ago. After a movie. We split fajitas. She said she was too full for dessert, but ended up eating half my lava cake. I hated that memory now. I wanted to erase it. Wanted to remember it. But it clung to me like gum on the bottom of a shoe. At 3:29, they came back out. She was texting as she walked. He was talking, but she barely looked up. Then she laughed again. Same laugh. Same tilt of the head. Like they were teenagers sneaking out of class. They kissed. Just for a second. On the lips. Quick, but familiar. Then she got into the Civic again, and they drove off. I didn't follow this time. I sat there another 20 minutes, staring at the empty parking space they'd left behind. Then I drove home, slower than usual. Like every mile hurt. Back at the house, the light was weird, late-day gold cutting across the kitchen floor through the blinds. Dust in the air caught it, floating like ash. I sat at the table. Same spot I always do. Picked at the corner of a paper towel someone had left. It tore easy. My hands were sweaty. I wanted to scream. Break something. Instead, I opened the fridge and pulled out a half-drunk bottle of cheap boxed Pinot Grigio she kept for nights I just need to chill. I poured it into a chipped ceramic mug from her book club and downed it in 3 gulps. It burned. Sweet. Warm. Pathetic. At 6:14, the garage door opened. Her car. She came in with 2 grocery bags. Some salad mix. A rotisserie chicken. Diet ginger ale. Hey, she said like nothing had happened. You already eat? I nodded. Couldn't speak. She put the bags on the counter. You okay? You look tired. I am. She paused. Looked at me. Just for a second. Something flickered behind her eyes. Worry? Guilt? Hard to tell. She turned back to the fridge. I'll just eat later, then. Long day. Yeah, I thought. I bet it was. She went upstairs soon after. Said she had to check emails for the clinic. I sat there, staring at the rotisserie chicken she never touched. Later that night, after she fell asleep, I crept into her office. Her purse was on the chair. I opened it. Inside, buried under a stack of tissues and an unopened granola bar, was a keycard. Renaissance Inn. Room 214. My chest felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. I put the keycard back. Left everything exactly how it was. But now I had more than texts. I had proof. And I was done pretending. The keycard changed something in me. I sat up all night, wide awake in the guest room, staring at the shadows that stretched across the ceiling like prison bars every time a car passed. I didn't drink. I didn't cry. I just sat there, feeling my pulse in my neck, tight and constant. I thought about the fact that she'd been carrying it around. That it wasn't just a one-time thing. That she'd kept a physical reminder in her purse, right next to her chapstick and church bulletin, and that old crumpled receipt from Target she never throws out. She hadn't even tried to hide it. I imagined her reaching for it without thinking. Like it was just another part of her day. By 7 a.m., I was dressed and out of the house. I didn't tell her where I was going. She was still asleep when I walked past the bedroom, curled on her side, breathing slow and steady like someone without a goddamn care in the world. I stood there a second, watching her through the crack in the door, wondering how she could sleep at all. Then I left. I didn't know what I was planning. I drove around the block twice before heading east, out toward Middleburg Heights. I stopped at a greasy diner near the freeway. Ordered coffee and dry toast just to have something in front of me. The waitress looked about 19, dead-eyed, chewing gum like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She asked if I wanted cream. I said no. The booth vinyl stuck to my forearms. I took out a small notepad I used to use for grocery lists and started writing. Not poems. Not letters. Just facts. Renaissance Inn, room 214. Kissed in Chili's parking lot. Tell him you're working late Friday. Civic plate ends in 3QY. Keycard still in her purse. Laughed with him like she used to laugh with me. I stared at the list until the words didn't look like words anymore. My phone buzzed around 8:20. Julie, where are you? I didn't reply. 10 minutes later. Julie, everything okay? Still nothing. Then she called. I let it ring. I couldn't hear her voice. Not yet. Not while I still had that chicken rotisserie smell in my nostrils from last night. Not while my hands still remembered the texture of that keycard. Eventually, I drove to Lake Isaac. There's a walking path there around a marsh, quiet and empty most mornings. It was chilly, damp. The kind of cold that seeps through your jeans and bites your knees. I walked the loop twice. Didn't see a single soul. I watched geese skim across the water and wondered if they ever cheated on each other. Probably not. Probably just us humans. Around 11, I drove home. Her car was gone. She'd left a note on the kitchen table. Written on the back of a grocery list. Ran to Mom's. Will be back tonight. Please call me. She never goes to her mom's. Hasn't been there in months. I knew it was a lie. I stood at the sink, staring at the note until my knuckles turned white gripping the counter. Then I ripped it in half. Dropped it in the trash, right on top of the paper towel I'd used to wipe spilled creamer 2 days ago. I remembered that spill. She'd laughed. Said, "You always make a mess when you try to be helpful." I thought about calling my son. He lives in Akron with his wife and 2 kids. We haven't talked much this year. He's busy. I've kept things from him. But I couldn't bring myself to pull him into this. Not yet. I sat down at the kitchen table, same chair as always, and stared out the window. The neighborhood was quiet. An older man jogged by with a limp. A UPS truck hissed to a stop 2 doors down. Then my phone buzzed again. Blocked number. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. "Rick," a man's voice said. My stomach dropped. Who is this? A pause. Then, I think we need to talk. About Julie. Silence. Heavy. Thick. I didn't breathe. Who are you? I asked again, voice lower now. My name's Nathan. I've been seeing your wife. He said it so flatly. No hesitation. Like he'd practiced it. I didn't speak. My jaw locked. I didn't know she was married, he continued, voice softening. Not at first. She said she was separated. She didn't mention you until a few weeks ago. I found out the truth. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The blood in my ears was roaring. I could barely hear him over it. When did it start? I asked, barely above a whisper. October. Last fall. We met at a medical tech conference in Cincinnati. I squeezed the phone so hard my fingers went numb. Why are you calling me? I finally snapped. Because I'm not seeing her anymore. And I thought you deserved to know the truth. All of it. I couldn't speak. Couldn't think. My body felt like it wasn't mine. I'm sorry, he said, and then he hung up. I just sat there, holding the phone to my ear long after the line went dead. October. They'd been together since October. And she lied every day. I didn't even notice the tears until one hit the back of my hand. I didn't move for a long time after that call. Just sat there at the table, phone still in my hand, staring out the window like something out there would explain all of this. October. That was 8 months ago. Halloween. Thanksgiving. Christmas. New Year's. All of them fake. All of them built on her lie. She'd kissed me on New Year's Eve with champagne breath and said, "Here's to another year of us." I said, "Always," like a fool. Around 12:30, I finally stood up. My knees cracked, and I felt unsteady, like I'd aged 20 years in one morning. I poured myself a glass of water, but it sat untouched on the counter. I walked into her office, a little room off the hall with pale green walls and a crooked diploma from nursing school. It smelled faintly like lavender oil and printer ink. Her laptop was closed. The corkboard above the desk still had our grocery list pinned to it. We needed eggs. Flour. Chicken thighs. I opened the bottom drawer. Inside, tucked behind a stack of notebooks and an old birthday card, was a phone. Not her Samsung. Another one. Smaller. Gray case. Cheap. Like a burner. My stomach twisted as I picked it up. It was off. I pressed the power button. Nothing. Dead battery. I found a charger in the junk drawer. Plugged it in. The screen lit up with a dull buzz. Low battery warning. Then a lock screen. No fingerprint. Just a passcode. I stared at the numbers. Tried her birthday. Wrong. Our wedding anniversary. Wrong. Her daughter's birthday. Wrong. I tried mine. It opened. The home screen was empty. No apps. Just a text icon and the phone dialer. I opened messages. The first one. Nathan, a room 214 again? I'll bring that wine you liked. Another. Nathan, I dreamt about your hands. Another. Julie, he doesn't know. He never will. You're the only thing that feels real anymore. I scrolled through hundreds of messages. Pictures. A blurry selfie of them at some restaurant. One of her feet on a hotel bed, nails painted red. A voice memo from him whispering her name. It was all there. Not just the affair, but the intimacy. The pieces of her I thought were mine. Her laugh. Her insecurities. Her little confessions. She gave it all to him. I dropped the phone on the desk like it burned. My skin felt cold. I backed out of the room, hands shaking. In the hallway mirror, I looked like hell. Eyes red. Cheeks sunken. Shirt wrinkled. Like someone who just crawled out of a wreck. I took a shower, but the water didn't help. Couldn't wash the feeling off. I sat on the edge of the tub with the water running and just breathed. Counted tiles. The sound of water hitting porcelain was the only thing keeping me from completely unraveling. At 3:40 p.m., I heard the garage door again. She was home. I dried off fast, tossed on a t-shirt and jeans, and sat back at the kitchen table. My hands were steady now. Too steady. She walked in with a grocery bag and a tight smile. "Hey," she said, like she'd just stepped out for milk. "You left early this morning. Everything okay?" I nodded. Had to clear my head. She put the bag down. "I went to Mom's. She's not doing great. Wanted help organizing her meds." I nodded again. She looked at me for a moment too long. "You sure you're okay? You know what I found today?" I said, keeping my voice calm. She froze. "What?" "In your purse. The key card." Her face didn't change at first. Then the blood drained. Her hand dropped from the bag like it lost power. "Rick, I also talked to Nathan." She sat down like her knees gave out. Right across from me. No tears yet. Just stunned. I kept going. "He thought you were separated. Told me everything. Cincinnati. The conference. October." She whispered, "I was going to tell you." "When? After our anniversary? Or maybe after the next trip to the clinic?" Now the tears came. Fast and full. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. "I never meant to hurt you," she sobbed. "It just happened. I was lost. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. Everything between us felt so numb." "Numb?" I said, the word catching in my throat. "You could have said that. You could have screamed it. Instead, you slept with someone else." She wiped her face with a paper towel, trembling. "It wasn't about him," she whispered. "It was about me. About feeling like someone saw me again." I leaned back in the chair. The wood creaked. "So what now?" She looked up, mascara smudged under her eyes. "I don't know," she said. "I still love you. I do. But I know I broke something. Maybe for good." I nodded slowly. "Yeah. You did." The air between us felt like static. She reached out across the table, her fingers barely brushing mine. I pulled away. "I need time," I said. "I need space. And I need you out of this house. For now." She didn't argue. She just nodded, stood up slowly, and walked to the stairs to pack. I sat there in the silence she left behind. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I wanted her back. She left just after 9. A single duffel bag over her shoulder, the blue one we used to take on beach trips. It sagged like it was half empty. Probably was. I didn't help her carry it. Just stood in the doorway with my arms crossed while she looked around the house one last time, eyes sweeping across the walls like they held memories she was suddenly trying to memorize. "I'll stay at Lisa's for now," she said quietly. "She's got a guest room." Lisa was her co-worker. Divorced. Lived off Ridge Road. I didn't ask if she'd told Lisa why. Okay, I said. Julie hesitated like she wanted to hug me. Or maybe just touch my hand. But I didn't move. So she didn't either. Please don't shut me out completely, she said, voice cracking. I want to fix this. I nodded, but didn't promise anything. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut. The porch light hummed overhead, casting her shadow long across the driveway before it disappeared behind the car door. I heard the engine start, tires roll over the gravel edge, and then just silence. I locked the door. The house didn't feel emptier. That was the worst part. It felt the same. Same creaks in the floor. Same hum from the fridge. Same faint scent of dryer sheets from the last load of laundry she did. She'd already been fading from it for months. Maybe longer. I sat in the living room and stared at the blank TV screen for hours. Didn't turn it on. Didn't need the noise. My thoughts were loud enough. I kept thinking about all the things I hadn't said. All the chances I'd missed to notice something was wrong. When did we stop talking about real things? When did we stop touching each other without thinking? Somewhere in between grocery lists and silent dinners, we drifted. But not like this. Not enough to justify this. At midnight, I went upstairs and lay down in our bed. Still made on her side. The pillow smelled like her shampoo, coconut, and something floral I could never identify. I turned it over. It didn't help. I woke up at 4:06 a.m. drenched in sweat from a dream I couldn't remember. The next few days moved in slow motion. I didn't tell anyone. Not friends. Not the kids. Not even my brother, who called to ask if I'd seen the Guardians game last weekend. I lied. Said I'd been busy. Said Julie was working extra shifts. On the third day, I opened her laptop again. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I just needed something to make sense. Something to explain how we got here. There were emails. Dozens of them. Most from him. Some short and flirty. Others long. Deep. About books they read. About fears she'd never said out loud to me. He knew things I didn't. She told him things I hadn't heard in years. I think I'm disappearing, she wrote once. Like I don't exist when I walk into a room. He used to notice everything. Now I could wear a clown suit and he'd still be looking at his phone. That one hit harder than the pictures. She wasn't wrong. I'd gotten lazy. Comfortable. I stopped telling her she looked good. Stopped noticing when she changed her hair or wore that dress with the back seam that always drove me crazy when we were younger. But still. I didn't cheat. She did. On Friday afternoon, a package arrived. Brown box. No return address. Just our last name scribbled in black marker. Inside was a flash drive. Nothing else. No note. I plugged it into my laptop. There were 5 files. All video. Shaky. Grainy. Phone clips, judging by the resolution. Room 214. They were together. Fully clothed in some. Half in others. One of the clips was just her sitting on the bed, brushing her hair, looking straight into the camera while Nathan filmed her from behind. She looked happy. Comfortable. Like herself. Like someone I hadn't seen in years. I ejected the drive, walked outside, and threw it into the garbage bin. Then I sat on the back steps, watching a squirrel tear at a hole in the bird feeder. The wind pushed through the branches, making everything sound distant, like I was underwater. Around 6 p.m., the landline rang. We never use it. Only spam calls and political messages find their way there. I picked it up anyway. Rick. Her voice. I didn't answer. I miss you, she said. I miss us. I closed my eyes. You were gone before you left, I said. I just didn't want to see it. She didn't speak for a while. Can we meet? Just talk. Please? I should have said no. But I didn't. Tomorrow. Noon. St. James Park. The bench by the pond. I'll be there, she whispered. I hung up. Then sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, wondering what the hell I was doing. Because part of me still loved her. And part of me wanted to scream. It rained the next morning. Not a storm, just that quiet, steady kind that makes everything smell like wet pavement and damp mulch. The kind of rain that gets in your socks no matter what shoes you wear. I stood by the back door, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching it bead on the railing. The kitchen light was off. I didn't want too much brightness. The park was 10 minutes away. I left the house at 11:40, not because I was in a hurry, but because I couldn't sit still any longer. I took the long way there. Drove past the old high school. Past the bait shop that's been closed since the pandemic. Past the church Julie and I used to attend on Easter and Christmas, when the kids were little and still believed in angels. Everything looked smaller now. St. James Park was nearly empty. Just a jogger under a plastic poncho and a woman pushing a stroller with the hood up. I pulled into the lot and cut the engine. The windshield wipers squeaked twice before I shut them off. Rain tapped the roof like fingers drumming on a desk. She was already there. Sitting on the green metal bench by the pond, hood pulled up over her hair. Her legs crossed, white sneakers soaked halfway up the sides. She didn't look around. Just stared straight ahead at the murky water, where a few ducks paddled in lazy circles. I stayed in the truck a full minute before getting out. The air smelled like wet leaves and pine needles. I walked slow, every step making that sticky sound on the pavement. My jeans were damp at the cuffs before I even sat down. She looked at me. Tried a smile. Didn't work. Thanks for coming, she said. I didn't answer. We sat there in the rain like strangers waiting on a bus. After a while, she cleared her throat. I'm not going to beg, Rick. I just want to talk. Tell the truth. I nodded once, stiff. She pulled her hood down. Her hair was frizzy, rain clinging to the strands. Her face looked older somehow. Tired. I wasn't planning to cheat, she said. I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what? I think I'll destroy my marriage. I snorted. No one ever does. She turned toward me, but I didn't meet her eyes. I was lonely, she went on. I know that sounds cliché, but it's the truth. You'd stopped looking at me, Rick. You stopped seeing me. I clenched my jaw. You could have said something. I did. So many times. But it was like talking to a wall. You'd grunt, or nod, or just keep watching the damn TV. I tried. I really did. I wanted to yell. Wanted to tell her how unfair that was. How she'd never once told me she was unhappy in a way that sounded serious. But I didn't. Instead, I said, so Nathan made you feel seen. She hesitated. Yeah. He listened. He asked questions. He made me feel like I mattered. And that justified 8 months of lying to my face? No, she whispered. It didn't. Nothing does. The rain came harder. I wiped my sleeve across my forehead. Water was running down the back of my neck. I keep replaying it, I said. Every dinner, every drive, Every time you said I love you or while you were texting him behind my back. She flinched. I never stopped loving you. I laughed, bitter. You got a funny way of showing it. Silence again. Just the sound of ducks splashing and tires hissing on the nearby road. I ended it, she said. 2 weeks ago. Before you found the messages. Why? Because it wasn't real. Or, it was, but not the way I wanted. It wasn't love. It was escape. I turned to her finally. You could have left. Told me you wanted a divorce. Told me you were done. But instead, you played house while sneaking off to motel rooms. Her lip trembled. I know. I saw the videos, I said. Flat. No emotion. She froze. What videos? On the flash drive. The one someone mailed me. You didn't know? Her face went white. She shook her head. Oh my God. I watched her panic ripple through her. That was new. She hadn't looked scared before. Who sent it? She asked, voice small. Don't know. Maybe your buddy Nathan. She looked away, ashamed. I stood up. This isn't going to get fixed today, I said. I don't even know if it'll get fixed at all. She stood too. I just want the chance to try. I stepped back. Right now, I need space. Not promises. Not therapy flyers. Just space. She nodded. Water rolled down her cheeks, mixing with tears. As I turned to leave, she called after me. I meant it when I said I loved you. I stopped, looked over my shoulder. I meant it too. Once. Then I walked to my truck and drove home with wet socks and a heavier heart than I'd ever carried. The silence at home didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt loaded. I spent the rest of that Saturday cleaning the garage. Not because it needed it, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Something repetitive. Stupid. Familiar. I swept the floor twice. Sorted old cans of motor oil I'd never use again. Wiped down the workbench like I was preparing for a project I didn't have. Every time I looked up, I expected her to come through the door and ask why I was bothering with all this junk. But she didn't. She wouldn't. Not for a while, if at all. By 5, I was sitting in the driveway, still in my work gloves, drinking warm Pepsi out of a plastic bottle that had been rolling around under the passenger seat for God knows how long. A couple walked past with their golden retriever. The guy nodded at me. I nodded back. I wondered if he knew what it felt like to be hollowed out from the inside. The next morning was Sunday. Usually, Julie would make blueberry pancakes. She liked to play some old 70s playlist on the speaker. She'd hum along off-key while I read the paper. It was our ritual. Quiet. Domestic. Safe. That morning, I poured cereal. Ate it standing over the sink. The milk was sour. I drank it anyway. Around noon, I called my daughter. Hey, Dad, she said, bright as ever. Everything okay? Not really. She paused. What's going on? I walked into the den. Shut the door. The air in there was stale. I hadn't opened the window since spring. Your mom and I, we are taking some space. Another pause. Longer this time. Did something happen? She cheated, I said, flat. 4 months. I expected shock. Anger. Maybe tears. Instead, she sighed. I was afraid of that, she said. That stopped me cold. What? She lowered her voice. There were signs, Dad. The late trips. The phone always face down. She was different. I didn't want to say anything, but, yeah. I knew something was off. I felt like the floor had shifted beneath me. Why didn't you tell me? Because you looked happy. And because I didn't have proof. And because I didn't want to hurt you if I was wrong. I sank onto the couch. I'm sorry, she said softly. I really am. Are you okay? No, I said. But I'm still standing. We talked for a while after that. She asked if I needed anything. Offered to come by. I told her no. I didn't want company. I just needed her to know. That night, around 11, my phone buzzed. Julie, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed today. I just miss home. I didn't answer. Not right away. I lay there in bed, staring at the glow of the screen. My chest felt like someone had wrapped it in barbed wire. Then I typed. When did you stop loving me? She replied a few minutes later. I never did. I just stopped loving myself. I didn't know what to do with that. I turned off my phone and stared into the dark. Monday came fast. I didn't sleep much. My neck ached. I took a hot shower, but it didn't help. I sat in the kitchen drinking weak coffee from a chipped mug. The one that said "World's okayest dad." I used to think it was funny. The doorbell rang at 8:47 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, it was Lisa. Julie's co-worker. The one she said she was staying with. She looked uncomfortable. Holding her purse like a shield. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She walked in like she didn't know where to stand. Finally settled by the fireplace. She's not with me, Lisa said. She hasn't been. Not since the night she left. I blinked. What? She asked if she could stay, but I told her no. Not because I'm mad, because I knew this was serious, and I didn't want to get in the middle. I figured she had a hotel. Why are you telling me this? She shifted on her feet. Because I thought you should know she's not where she said she was. And because, Rick, she came by the clinic last week. She was crying. Said she'd made a huge mistake. Said she was scared to go home. I leaned against the wall. It felt cold through my shirt. Do you know where she is now? I asked. Lisa shook her head. No. But I know she's not with Nathan either. She told him it was over. I think she's spiraling. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to be furious. Part of me wanted to find her and drag the truth out once and for all. But another part of me, deep down, felt a strange ache. Not pity. Not forgiveness. Just sadness. Lisa placed something on the table. A small envelope. She asked me to give you this if I saw you. Said she was too afraid to mail it. Then she left. I waited a long time before opening the envelope. Inside was a note. Handwritten. In her messy, looping script. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Every day I wake up and wish I could rewind. You didn't deserve this. None of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that every moment I spent with you was real. Even at the end. There was no signature. Just an ink smear where her pen had paused. I held the note for a while. And then, for the first time in days, I let myself cry. Not the angry, betrayed kind. But the quiet, broken kind that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. Because sometimes love doesn't die. It just forgets how to be heard. Tuesday started with grey light bleeding through the blinds. One of those mornings where everything looks colorless, like someone took the saturation dial and turned it down to 0. I hadn't moved much since reading the letter. The envelope was still sitting on the kitchen table, stained with a coffee ring. I kept glancing at it, like it might sprout legs and walk off. It hadn't. It just sat there, heavy with things I couldn't forget and didn't want to reread. I made toast, burned it, didn't eat it. Washed the plate anyway. Couldn't stand the clutter. Around 9 o'clock, I pulled out a photo album from the hallway cabinet. Thick one. Brown leather, worn along the edges. Dust made my fingers itch. I flipped through it slow. There we were. Julie in a red sundress, laughing on a beach in Myrtle. Me in a tacky button-up, sunburned, holding a beer. The kids, all gap-toothed and sticky with amusement park cotton candy. Christmas mornings. Graduation caps. Her asleep on the couch in that old Ohio State hoodie, one hand wrapped around a paperback. I couldn't look anymore. I shut the album, slid it back into the cabinet, and closed the door a little harder than I meant to. The knock at the door came around 10:15. 3 short raps. I froze. It wasn't the mailman. He comes at noon. I opened the door halfway. Julie stood there. No umbrella. Hair wet. Eyes tired. She wore an oversized hoodie, jeans soaked to the knees, and sneakers that squished slightly when she shifted her weight. I didn't know where else to go, she said. Rain dripped from the hood onto the doormat. I stepped aside. She walked in slow, like the air was heavier in the house. Like she was waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. She stood near the kitchen, unsure. I haven't been staying with Lisa, she admitted. I know. She told you? She did. Julie nodded. Pulled her wet sleeves over her hands. I've been at a days in off I-90. Room smells like bleach and bad decisions. I didn't ask why she lied. Didn't need to. She looked around like she was trying to remember something. You moved the mail basket. I had. From the counter to the wall by the fridge. She used to hate it cluttering the kitchen. I've been losing it, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Waking up at 3 a.m. with my heart racing. Dreaming of you, of this place, of all the ways I ruined it. You should have thought about that in October, I said. She winced like I'd slapped her. I know, she said. I know every timeline now. I count the lies in my head. They outnumber the days. I leaned against the counter. Cold edge pressed into my back. I read all the texts. I watched the videos. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. I burned the flash drive, I added. But I still remember every second. She nodded. Tears welled but didn't fall. I deserved that. You deserve a hell of a lot more. She took a step closer. Stopped. I'm not asking to come back. I just needed to look you in the eyes and tell you something. Go ahead. I never stopped loving you, she said. Not for a single second. That's funny, I muttered. You sure fooled me. She exhaled hard through her nose, hands trembling. I know this isn't enough. I know sorry doesn't cut it. But I had to say it. I had to try. I stayed quiet. I've been going to therapy, she added. Twice a week. The counselor says I'm dealing with self-worth issues. Attachment wounds. Fancy words for being broken and selfish. Sounds about right. She didn't flinch this time. Just looked down at her soaked shoes. You didn't deserve this, Rick. You've never deserved this. I crossed my arms. She looked up. Met my eyes. I miss your snoring, she said. I miss the way you talk to the TV like it's listening. I miss how you always fold your socks in perfect little squares. She sniffed. I miss my life. You walked away from it. I know. We stood in silence again. The kind that squeezes your ribs from the inside. Finally, I asked, why now? Because I can't breathe without this place, she said. And because even if you never forgive me, I wanted to be brave enough to face what I broke. I turned toward the window. Watched the rain streak down the glass. You said you don't expect forgiveness. She nodded. I don't know if I'll ever have it to give, I said. I understand. More silence. Then, quietly, do you want me to leave? I thought about it. Really thought. And then I said, no. Sit down. But don't expect anything. She pulled out the chair slowly, like it might collapse. Saturday. Her knees bounced under the table. I poured her a cup of coffee. No creamer. We didn't have any left. She took it anyway. We didn't say anything for a while. Just sat there in the kitchen, surrounded by ghosts and the sound of rain. And for the first time, I didn't feel completely alone. We sat there for nearly an hour without saying much. The coffee grew cold. Neither of us touched it again after the second sip. Hers sat between her hands, cradled like something fragile. She stared into it like the answer to all of this might be floating on the surface. I watched the curve of her fingers around the mug. Familiar and foreign all at once. This was a woman I knew inside and out. Her favorite songs. The way she bites the inside of her cheek when she's nervous. The way she always turns the pillow over to the cool side before she sleeps. But she wasn't the same. And I wasn't either. I went back to the pond yesterday, she said quietly, not looking up. After you left. I didn't respond. It was raining harder by then. I just sat there. Watched the ducks. She let out a breath. There's something about watching them float, like they don't care what's happening under the surface. Just glide. Her voice was soft. Worn down at the edges. You want to talk about ducks? I asked, more sharply than I intended. She flinched. I stood up, paced a few feet, ran a hand through my hair. I'm sitting here trying to figure out if we are having a conversation or a funeral. And you talking about ducks. She nodded slowly. Took the hit. I'm sorry, she said again. I keep saying it. I don't even know if it means anything anymore. It doesn't, I snapped. It doesn't mean a goddamn thing when you've said it after every lie. That shut her up. I sat back down, leaning forward, elbows on the table. I want to know the truth. All of it. I don't care how bad it sounds. She hesitated. I could see the war happening behind her eyes. I told you the affair started in October, she said slowly. I nodded. That was the first time we slept together. But we'd been talking since June. My jaw clenched. She noticed. Kept going. It started after that seminar in Cincinnati. I went to that wine bar with some of the nurses after the last session, and Nathan was there too. He bought me a drink. Nothing happened. Just talked. I looked away, toward the window again. The sky was clearing. A pale blue creeping through the gray. I should have shut it down, she said. I knew something was off. But I liked the attention. I liked feeling wanted. I laughed, bitter. So what? I didn't want you? No, she said quickly. No. That's not it. It wasn't about you not loving me. It was about me not knowing how to love myself anymore. I scoffed. She continued. I'd look in the mirror and see someone fading. Someone invisible. And he made me feel seen. Right, I muttered. By seeing you in a motel bed. Her face flushed. She didn't argue. I leaned back, arms crossed. What else? I asked. Her throat worked around the words. There were others, she said quietly. The room went still. I stared at her. Waiting. Not like him, she rushed to explain. Nothing physical. Just text messages. Flirting. Online chats. It never got serious. But it was a pattern. Something I did when I felt disconnected. Like I was proving I still had it. I rubbed my forehead. My skin was hot. My chest tight. How long has this been going on? The emotional stuff? A few years, on and off. I stood again. Couldn't sit through this. So I was living with a stranger. No, she said, her voice cracking. You were living with someone who was breaking and didn't know how to say it. I turned to her, fists clenched at my sides. Then you should have screamed, I said. You should have thrown a plate. Said something. I was scared, she whispered. I thought if I said it out loud, it would be real. It was real, I said. It's always been real. You just didn't want to face it. She broke then. The tears came hard, her shoulders shaking, breath hitching. It wasn't performative. It wasn't for show. It was ugly crying, the kind where the nose runs and the words fall apart. I hate what I did, she said between sobs. I hate that I hurt you. That I broke something we built for decades. I can't take it back. But I can try to be better. I want to be better. I didn't move to comfort her. Just stood there, hands twitching, my heart loud in my ears. Eventually, she looked up, eyes red, face wet. I'll leave, she said. I didn't come here to guilt you into anything. I had to tell you all of it. You deserve that. She stood slowly, wiping her face with her sleeve. I hope one day you can see me again, not the liar. Not the coward. Just me. She walked to the door. But before she opened it, I asked, why now? She looked back. Because you let me sit at the table this morning. And that was more grace than I deserved. Then she stepped out into the sunlight, still wet from the rain, and left me standing in the ruins of everything I thought I knew. The door clicked shut behind her, and the sound echoed in the hallway like a slap. I didn't move. I stood there staring at the space she'd just occupied, watching dust float through the beam of sunlight cutting across the floor. There was still a small puddle where her shoes had been. Just water and dirt, but it felt heavier than that. Like she'd left a piece of the mess behind. Eventually, I sat down. Not in the kitchen this time, but on the bottom step of the staircase, where I used to tie the kids' shoes before school. The carpet was worn, flattened by years of footsteps. My back ached from standing. My hands felt cold. I didn't know what I felt. Anger had burned through me already. So had shame, and betrayal, and grief. What was left was something duller. Not acceptance. Not forgiveness. Just a kind of stunned emptiness. I stayed there for an hour. Maybe more. At some point, I got up and walked into the bedroom. Her side of the bed was still perfectly made. I sat down on mine. Looked around. The framed photo on her nightstand was still there, us on the back deck, mid-laugh, a beer in my hand, her leaning into me like I was something safe. I turned it face down. Then I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the small fireproof box where we kept all our important stuff. Birth certificates. House deed. Spare keys. I'd forgotten how much was in there. In the corner, folded up and creased, was a handwritten letter she'd given me on our 20th anniversary. I remember it now, how nervous she was handing it to me. How I'd cried reading it. I unfolded it again. She'd written, "No matter what we go through, I'll always fight for us. Even when it's hard. Especially then." I put the letter back. My throat was tight, and I couldn't tell if it was from sadness or something worse. Something like guilt. Because part of me kept wondering when exactly I stopped noticing her pain. When I stopped reaching for her in bed. When I stopped asking real questions. But then I'd remember that she didn't just drift. She ran. She made choices. Hiding messages. Meeting him in hotels. Letting someone else see parts of her that used to be mine. At 5 p.m., I finally went outside. The driveway was still wet from the morning rain, but the sun had warmed the air. It smelled like cut grass and hot asphalt. I walked 2 blocks to the corner store. Bought a 6-pack of Yingling and a gas station sandwich I didn't eat. The guy behind the counter didn't say a word. Back home, I sat on the deck. Cracked a beer. Listened to the cicadas scream in the trees. A neighbor was mowing their lawn. The whine of the engine buzzed in my ears until it just became part of the noise in my head. Around 7 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Out-of-state area code. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it buzzed again. Same number. This time, I answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then a voice. A woman. "Is this Rick Walters?" "Who's calling?" "My name is Melanie. I'm Nathan's wife." My pulse kicked. She cleared her throat. "I know this is a lot, but I figured you should know what's been going on over here too." I didn't say anything. "I found out everything 2 weeks ago," she continued. "Messages. Photos. The whole deal. Your wife. I mean, Julie, she wasn't the only one. Nathan's been doing this for years." My mouth went dry. I stood and walked to the edge of the deck, gripping the railing with one hand. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know how to reach you, but I found your number in one of the messages." "You read them?" "All of them." He kept everything. I pictured him, smug in some hotel room, saving texts like trophies. "Why are you calling me?" I finally asked. "Because I wanted you to hear it from someone who understands. Who's just as humiliated. Just as wrecked. And because I think you deserve better than whatever half-truths he's been feeding your wife." "She told me it ended," I said. Melanie exhaled. "Maybe it did. But it wasn't clean. And it wasn't just about love or loneliness. Nathan has a pattern. She wasn't the first married woman. She won't be the last." I felt sick. "Do you think she knew?" I asked. "I think she believed what she wanted to believe. Same as I did." We were quiet for a long time after that. Then she said, "I'm divorcing him." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yeah. I get that. I hope you do what's right for you," she said softly. "Not out of guilt. Not out of habit. But what you really need." Then she hung up. I stood on the deck with the phone still in my hand, the sky turning purple above me. Mosquitoes hummed around the porch light. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Normal life continued, indifferent to everything that had just cracked open. I sat down again. Cracked another beer. And for the first time since this began, I started thinking not about her, but about me. Wednesday started quiet, but my head wasn't. I woke around 6:20 a.m. to the sound of the trash truck rumbling down the street. That low diesel groan, the clanking of bins being dragged, and the occasional metal bang as cans hit the lift. Normally, I'd still be asleep. But I was already lying there with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling fan. I hadn't dreamt. At least not that I could remember. Just a strange floaty kind of night, in and out of shallow sleep, haunted by the echo of a voice I didn't want to miss but didn't want to hear. Julie's. The phone call with Melanie kept looping in my head, too. Her voice was steady, but broken in places. There was something eerie about hearing from the wife of the man who'd helped dismantle my marriage. It was like we were both living the same nightmare, in different houses. By 7 o'clock, I was downstairs. I made coffee but didn't drink it. Just like the sound of the drip. Something predictable. The dining room still had Julie's fall decorations out. Little ceramic pumpkins on the windowsill. An orange plaid runner down the center of the table. She loved seasons. Always wanted the house to reflect the time of year. I never cared much, but now the pumpkins just looked out of place. Sad. I walked over and boxed them up. Didn't throw them out, just put them away. Couldn't look at them anymore. Afterward, I stood in the hallway for a while, hand resting on the picture frame of our wedding photo. I didn't take it down. Not yet. I wasn't sure why. At 10:30, my phone buzzed. Julie, can we talk again? I stared at the screen. Thought about deleting the message without answering. But I didn't. Me, where? Julie, your choice. Me, the Pierre. Noon. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. Something about that felt wrong. Casual. Like she didn't understand the weight of what she'd done. I spent the next hour pacing. Should I even go? What was the point? I could have said no. Should have, maybe. But I wanted clarity. I needed to look her in the face one more time, now that the fog had started to lift, and ask her the thing I still hadn't dared say out loud. Why was I never enough? The pier was 20 minutes away. On the lake. Windy and always colder than you expect. I wore my denim jacket. The one with the frayed collar that Julie used to threaten to throw out every fall. When I got there, she was already waiting. Sitting on the end of the wooden bench, arms crossed, hair pulled back. No makeup. Just her. Stripped down. I approached slowly. My boots echoed on the boards. She looked up. Hey. Hey. I didn't sit right away. Just leaned on the railing, staring at the water. It was choppy, grey. Seagulls hovered, circling something I couldn't see. She waited. Patient, almost nervous. I talked to Melanie, I said finally. Her face stiffened. She told me about Nathan. About how this wasn't new for him. Julie nodded. I figured she might. You weren't his first. No, she said. I wasn't. That matter to you now? I wish it had mattered sooner. Silence. She shifted on the bench. I was stupid, Rick. I told myself he was different. That I was different. I wanted to believe I was special, not just another name on his list. Why? I asked. That's the one thing I still don't get. Why him? Why not just tell me you weren't happy? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Finally, because I didn't know how to say it without it sounding like blame. You didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped being there. Present. And I stopped asking for what I needed. I would have tried, I said. If you'd just said something. She nodded. I know. But by the time I realized how far I drifted, I was already knee-deep in something else. That's not a reason. That's a convenience. I know. Her voice broke a little. I was afraid, she added, that if I said it out loud, it would make it real. So I chose silence and fantasy over fixing what we had. I sat down finally. Not next to her. A few feet away. You lied to my face. For months. I lied to myself first. Another pause. Just the waves crashing against the dock. Do you love him? I asked. She turned to me, surprised. I don't know who he really is, she said. I think I loved the way he looked at me. But not him. You risked everything for a man you didn't even know. She looked down. I know. My voice lowered. I still don't know if I want to try. If I can try. She didn't argue. Just nodded. I don't expect forgiveness, Rick. But I'm not giving up on trying to become the kind of person who deserves it. I stared at the lake. A sailboat cut across the horizon, its white fabric straining against the wind. I'm going to stay at the house for a while, I said. Alone. I need time. And I don't want to see you until I ask to. I understand. She stood. Her hands were shaking. I still love you, she said. That hasn't changed. Then you should have fought for it before it broke. She nodded once. Wiped her nose with the sleeve of her sweater. Then she walked away without looking back. I sat there another 20 minutes. Just me and the wind. And the sound of everything she didn't say. The house felt bigger without her. Not empty, exactly. Just stretched. Like the walls were leaning away from each other. Like the quiet had crept into places it didn't belong, inside the vents, behind the couch cushions, under the bed. I kept the TV off that night. Couldn't stand the sound of voices that weren't real. I ate dinner standing over the sink again, leftover lasagna from the freezer. It was dry and tasted like cardboard, but I finished it anyway. It felt like punishment. I didn't know if I was punishing her or me. I didn't sleep much. Again. Tossed around until my neck ached and my arm went numb. Around 3 a.m., I gave up. Went downstairs. The kitchen was dark, the street lamp outside throwing orange stripes across the countertop. I poured a glass of water and stood there in the glow like it might tell me something. Then I opened the cabinet above the fridge. Pulled down the showbox. I hadn't touched it in years. It held random things, an old receipt from the hardware store, a broken keychain, a photo strip from a state fair in '97. And letters. The kind you don't throw away. One was from Julie. Dated 2004. The year I lost my job. She'd written it the night I came home drunk and silent, so ashamed I couldn't look her in the eye. It started with, I know you're hurting, but I need you to come back to me. I reread it 3 times. Then I tucked it away and sat in the living room until the sun came up. By Friday, I'd decided I needed to get out of town. Just for a day. Somewhere with no echoes. I called my friend Mitch. We've known each other 40 years. He moved out to Sandusky after retiring. Has a little place near the lake. We used to fish together every summer until our schedules got complicated and our knees started complaining. Come, he said immediately. I got beer. And bad jokes. I packed light, change of clothes, my shaving kit, a couple books I knew I wouldn't read. I hit the road before noon. Took the scenic route. Windows down, air whipping through. No music. just tires humming and my thoughts trying to keep up. Mitch's place was just like I remembered. Peeling white paint, rust on the porch rail, and a lawn that looked like it hadn't been mowed in a month. He met me on the steps with 2 cold ones and a smile that didn't ask questions. We sat outside. Talked about the Guardians, his neighbor's noisy rooster, and the time we got kicked out of a Browns game for cursing too loud in front of someone's grandma. Eventually, he leaned back and said, "So, what the hell happened?" I told him. All of it. He didn't interrupt. Didn't flinch. Just sipped his beer and stared out at the lake like he was watching the story happen in real time. When I finished, he said, "Damn." I laughed, just once. Dry. That's it? Damn? He shrugged. Ain't got a better word for it. Then he looked over. You still love her? I don't know. You still hate her? I paused. Less than I did. Then you're somewhere in between. That's the worst place, man. Too tired to fight, too hurt to forget. He stood, stretched his back, groaned. You want my advice? Not really. He gave it anyway. Don't let pride screw up what love's still holding together. But don't let guilt glue you to something that's already dead. I stayed the night in his guest room. Woke up to the smell of bacon and black coffee. We didn't talk much over breakfast. Just sat there, 2 old men chewing and thinking. Before I left, he handed me a small tackle box. Cleaned it up for you. Figure you might want to cast something besides anger for a change. I thanked him. Drove home slow. When I walked into the house that afternoon, something was different. It took me a minute to realize. The smell. Lavender. Not strong. Faint. Like someone had opened a bottle and walked away. I walked to the living room. On the coffee table was a note. Folded in half. My name written on the outside. No envelope. Just the paper. I sat down before I opened it. Rick. I stopped by while you were gone. I know I shouldn't have. I didn't stay. I just wanted to leave this. You don't have to read it now. Or ever. But I needed to say what I didn't have the words for when you asked me all those things. I was broken long before Nathan. I didn't realize how much I was disappearing until someone else saw me. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. I was afraid to need you, because needing you meant you had the power to hurt me. So I hurt you first. I don't expect to come back. I don't expect to be forgiven. But I'll spend every day trying to become someone who deserves peace, even if it's not with you. Love doesn't always end with a door slam. Sometimes it just stops fitting where it used to live. Julie. I read it twice. Then I folded it back up and placed it under the remote. Didn't cry. Didn't call. Just sat there in the fading afternoon light, wondering if maybe love wasn't something you lost all at once. Maybe it faded like a bruise. Slow. Tender. Lingering. And maybe, just maybe, there was still more of the story left to write. Saturday came in with cold wind off the lake and the kind of grey sky that never turns into rain but refuses to give you sun. The kind of day where people stay inside and let the house settle around them. I didn't. I grabbed a rake from the shed and spent 2 hours in the yard. Even though it was too early in the season. Even though there weren't that many leaves. I raked anyway, just for the motion, the sound, the ache in my shoulders. Something to keep my hands busy so my mind didn't wander too far. But it wandered anyway. Kept drifting back to that letter. Julie's words sat heavy in my head, like fog that wouldn't lift. Needing you meant you had the power to hurt me. So I hurt you first. That line kept circling. It didn't justify anything, but it dug into a part of me I hadn't wanted to touch yet. The part that knew I hadn't really been there. Not for years. I was in the house. I mowed the lawn. I cooked Sunday dinner. I rubbed her feet when her ankles swelled up after work. But I wasn't there in the way she needed. Still, there was a difference between distance and betrayal. And she crossed that line with both feet. Around noon, I went back inside. My jeans were streaked with mud. My hands were red and raw from gripping the wooden rake handle too tight. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. There were moments like this where I'd almost hear her voice in the other room. Like my brain was still wired to expect her to walk in, barefoot, hair pulled back, asking if we needed eggs. But she never did. The house stayed silent. I opened my phone and went to her contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. Then I backed out. Closed the screen. I wasn't ready to hear her voice again. Not yet. Not with so many things still half-formed inside me. That afternoon, I drove to the cemetery. Not something I normally do without a reason. But I hadn't visited my parents in a while, and suddenly, I wanted to. The cemetery was mostly empty. Just a couple cars. A man trimming flowers by a granite headstone. A woman sitting in the grass with a dog, murmuring something only they could hear. I parked and walked the short gravel path to the back section, where the older plots were. My dad's headstone had moss in the letters. I brushed it off with the sleeve of my flannel and sat on the bench nearby. I didn't talk out loud. Never felt the need. But I sat there for almost an hour. Just thinking. Watching wind blow leaves across the grass like they were trying to leave too. My dad cheated on my mom when I was in high school. I didn't understand it then. I thought it was black and white. Right and wrong. You cheat, you're the bad guy. That's the end. But my mom didn't leave him. She slept in the guest room for 6 months. He cooked her breakfast every morning, even when she didn't eat it. He followed her to church even though he hated it. He did everything he could until she finally looked him in the eye again. They stayed married. 39 years. When he died, she still wore his ring. I asked her once, years later, why she didn't leave. She said, because love is harder than pride. And I loved him more than I hated what he did. I didn't get it then. I wasn't sure I got it now. But sitting there, staring at the place where his name was carved into stone, I felt something crack open in me. Not forgiveness. But the beginning of something that might one day let it in. I drove home slow. When I got there, a white envelope was wedged in the storm door. My name in her handwriting again. No stamp. Inside was a single photo. Us. On the boardwalk. Summer 2005. She was wearing a yellow sundress. I had a ball cap on backward and was holding a soft serve ice cream cone she kept trying to steal bites from. We were laughing. Someone must have snapped the photo when we weren't looking. It wasn't staged. It was real. On the back, she'd written, "That day, I loved you so much it scared me." No signature. Just that sentence. I set the photo on the mantel and stood there a long time, watching it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if we'd make it. If we should. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I was treading water. Still alone. Still hurting. But breathing. And maybe that was enough for today. Sunday morning, the sky cracked open and let in light that didn't seem real. It was bright in a way that made everything in the house feel too sharp, like the corners were poking into me, like the shadows didn't have anywhere left to hide. The windows were warm to the touch. I stood by the sink with the water running and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd opened the curtains in the living room. I opened them. The backyard was still soggy from rain, patches of green peeking through the mud. There was a bird pecking around the edge of the patio, hopping and jerking like it had somewhere important to be. It looked ridiculous. But free. I hadn't spoken to Julie in 2 days. Since the letter. Since the photo. That picture of us still sat on the mantel. I hadn't touched it since I'd put it there, but I looked at it every time I passed. It pulled at something in me, nostalgia maybe, or guilt. Or both. Around 9 o'clock, my son called. He never calls this early unless something's wrong. "Hey, Dad." "Morning," I said, trying to sound normal. "You busy?" "Nope." He was quiet for a second. Then, Mom called me. I closed my eyes. What did she say? Said she messed up. Said she wasn't asking me to pick sides. Just that she needed to hear my voice. That sounded like her. She cry? Yeah. She good at it, I muttered. He didn't laugh. I'm not asking for details, he said. But, are you okay? I wanted to lie. Say yes. Say I was fine. But he deserved better than that. No, I said. But I'm figuring it out. That's fair. Another pause. I could hear a baby crying in the background, his youngest. His wife saying something softly, then a door closing. She told me she regrets it, he said. All of it. She should. She said she still loves you. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I know. I don't know what to say, Dad. I'm mad at her. But I also remember what you guys had. Before. When it was good. We were good, I said quietly. For a long time. Can you ever get back there? I didn't answer right away. Walked to the table. Sat down. Ran my hand across the wood grain like it might spell something out. I don't think you get back to anything, I said. You either build something new, or you let the old thing rot. He didn't speak for a long moment. Well, he said finally, if you ever want to come visit, bring a suitcase. We got room. Thanks, kid. Love you, Dad. Love you too. I hung up and just sat there, staring at my phone. 10 minutes later, it buzzed again. Julie, can I leave something on the porch for you? I won't knock. I didn't answer. An hour later, I heard the car. I stayed in the kitchen, watching from the window above the sink. She got out slow. Wore a jean jacket I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was pulled back. She had a paper bag in one hand and a small box in the other. She walked to the porch, placed the items gently near the mat, and looked at the door for a second like she might change her mind and knock. She didn't. She turned and left. After a while, I opened the door. Inside the bag was a loaf of banana bread. Still warm. I could smell the cinnamon. She used to make it when one of us was sick or when the kids had rough weeks at school. She never made it unless someone needed comfort. The box was heavier. Tied with a ribbon. I brought both inside and sat at the table. Inside the box were two things. First, a small notebook. Brown leather. Worn on the edges. I opened it. Her handwriting filled every page. Starting with, I started this 3 weeks ago. Every day, I wrote to you. Things I didn't say. Things I couldn't. Maybe you'll read them. Maybe you won't. But I had to try. I flipped through. One page said, Today I remembered how you always unplug the toaster after every use. I used to roll my eyes. Now I smile when I see the cord on the counter. Another? I caught myself humming the theme song to it. Cheers. You always said it reminded you of Saturdays in college. I never told you I hated that show. But I loved how your face lit up during the intro. There were pages and pages. Short memories. Apologies. Questions she never asked. Jokes we used to tell. Songs she heard that reminded her of me. One page just had a single line. I would have rather fought with you than laughed with anyone else. The second thing in the box was smaller. Wrapped in tissue. It was her wedding ring. Not mine. Hers. Inside the band was engraved, R&J 1986, still us. She'd added a note. I'm not asking to wear it again. I just didn't want to keep it somewhere it didn't belong. I closed the box. I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I walked to the mantel. Picked up the photo. The one of us laughing. The one she left with no words, just that sentence. I held the photo in one hand and the ring in the other. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel paralyzed. I didn't feel better, either. But I felt like I had a choice. Which, somehow, was more than I'd had before. I didn't call her. Not that day. I sat with the ring in my palm for a long time, feeling its weight. It wasn't heavy, really, just a simple gold band, worn smooth on the inside from years of habit. But it felt like a stone. Like it had soaked up everything she said, everything she didn't. By the time the sun dipped below the trees, I was still holding it. I thought about tossing it in a drawer. Or maybe back in the box. But instead, I placed it on the kitchen table, right next to my keys. I wasn't ready to let it go, and I wasn't ready to do anything with it, either. So I left it there, in the middle of everything. The banana bread sat untouched. The next morning, I opened the notebook again. I hadn't planned to. But I couldn't help myself. The first entry I landed on wasn't dated. Just written in slanted pen like she'd been rushing. I saw a man who looked like you today. Standing outside a hardware store, talking to someone with his hands, like he was explaining how to fix something. You always did that, talked with your hands. Even when no one was looking. I flipped to the next one. The night you found out, your face didn't go red. You didn't scream. You just broke. Quietly. That was worse. Another? I told myself I could stop whenever I wanted. I told myself it didn't count if it wasn't about love. But every lie counted. Every deleted message. Every time I told you I was tired when I just spent myself elsewhere. I closed the book. I didn't want more truth right then. I wanted distraction. I drove to the strip mall off Route 46. Bought light bulbs I didn't need. Refilled a propane tank for the grill I hadn't touched in 2 months. Walked through a hardware store aimlessly until a clerk asked if I was looking for something specific. I told him no. He smiled like he understood. Back home, I stood in the garage staring at the lawn mower. Then I mowed the front yard. Twice. The lines were perfect. Cleaner than they'd ever been. At dusk, I sat on the porch with a beer. The ring was still inside, still on the table. I watched the streetlights flicker on. Listened to a dog bark 2 blocks over. A car drove past, its bass low and slow like a heartbeat. Julie texted just before 9 o'clock. Julie, I'm not expecting anything. But thank you for not throwing it all away. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. But because I didn't know what it all even meant anymore. That night, I dreamed of the first apartment we lived in. The one with the yellow walls and the broken heater. We were younger. Julie wore one of my old sweatshirts. Her feet were cold, and she kept them pressed against my leg while we watched a movie on a borrowed TV. She smiled at me like nothing else in the world existed. I woke up before she said anything. The next day, I pulled out a spiral notebook and a pen. No laptop. No phone. I started writing. Not to her. To myself. I wrote about the day we met, how she stood in front of me at the DMV, cursing under her breath because the guy behind the counter told her she was missing a form. I wrote about the wedding, how the cake collapsed in the heat and we laughed until our stomachs hurt. I wrote about the time she left a sticky note on my lunch bag that said, "I miss your hands." I wrote until my fingers cramped. And when I looked down at the page, I realized something I hadn't said out loud yet. I missed her. Not the version that lied. Not the version that disappeared when I wasn't looking. But the woman who used to sit on the kitchen floor eating cereal out of the box. The one who made up lullabies for our daughter when she had ear infections. The one who used to trace circles on my back while I fell asleep. I missed that Julie. And for the first time, I let myself wonder if she could ever come back. If we both could. That evening, I picked up the ring again. Rolled it between my fingers. Held it up to the light. It was scratched in places, the engraving faint now. The words still there, but barely, R&J 1986, still us. Still us. I didn't know if that was true anymore. But I knew I hadn't closed the door all the way. Not yet. I texted her just 3 words. We need time. She replied instantly. Julie, anything you need. I didn't answer. Instead, I placed the ring back in the box, closed it gently, and left it on the mantel next to the photo. Not gone. Not worn. But not forgotten either. The next few days passed with a strange kind of rhythm. Not good. Not bad. Just quiet. I still hadn't replied to Julie's last message. Not because I was punishing her, but because I didn't know what to say that wouldn't open the floodgates again. I kept reading her notebook in pieces, 2 or 3 pages at a time, then setting it down like it burned. She didn't text again. And maybe that was her way of respecting the space I asked for. Or maybe she was afraid. I didn't know. And part of me didn't want to know. Tuesday morning, I was fixing the screen door. The bottom hinge had come loose during the last storm. I crouched down on the porch, drill in hand, sun beating on the back of my neck. It was one of those crisp late October days, blue sky, dry air, the smell of leaves and distant wood smoke in the breeze. My neighbor Ed called over the fence. Hey, Rick. You doing okay? I stood and wiped my hands on my jeans. Yeah, I said. Just fixing what I can. He nodded. He was about my age. Retired HVAC guy. Wore a ball cap everywhere and drank decaf because his wife said regular coffee made him too wired to listen. Ed hesitated, then leaned a little on the fence. My cousin went through something like this. 10 years back. Said the hardest part wasn't the betrayal. It was learning how to stop checking the review mirror every 10 seconds. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded. We stood there for a minute, not talking, watching a squirrel dig through Ed's flower bed like it had business there. He cleared his throat. Well, if you ever want to get out of your head, I'm taking the old boat out Thursday. Bring beer. Or don't. Just come. I thanked him. Said maybe. Didn't promise. That afternoon, I took a long walk around the neighborhood. I hadn't done that in a while. Just wandered. Past the park where our daughter used to climb the plastic dinosaur. Past the corner store that still smelled like burnt popcorn and dusty candy. I saw a teenage couple kissing near the basketball courts, their hands too nervous to know where to land. It made me feel old, but also weirdly grateful. Like I'd lived a whole life inside moments just like that. When I got home, I found something tucked under the doormat. It was another note. Not folded. Just a single page, lined, torn from a legal pad. Rick. I know I said I wouldn't write again unless you asked me to. I'm breaking that promise. I hope you'll understand. I just wanted to tell you where I'm going. I found a short-term rental 2 towns over. A woman named Marlene owns it. She's 72, retired nurse, runs a greenhouse out of her backyard. Her dog barks like a freight train and sleeps in the sunniest part of the house. I think I'll be safe there. I'm not asking you to follow me. I just want you to know that I'm still trying to become someone better. Not for you. For me. But if you ever need me, that door won't be locked. J. I stood in the doorway holding the letter for what felt like an hour. I pictured her in some little house, barefoot in the kitchen, making tea. That loud dog trailing behind. Her hair in a messy bun. Laughing at a joke no one else could hear. And it hit me. The house was really empty now. Not just quiet. Empty. I sat in the lazeboy with the letter in one hand and the ring box in the other. I'd always thought of forgiveness as something you handed over like a gift. A ribbon-wrapped box. Here, you get this now. But maybe it wasn't that simple. Maybe it was more like sandpaper. Rough. Wearing you down. Layer by layer, until there's something smooth beneath all the damage. I looked around the living room. The framed photo of the kids on the wall. The chipped coffee mug on the side table. The dent in the hardwood floor from the time we dropped the Christmas tree stand. These weren't decorations. They were scars. But scars meant healing. Eventually. Later that night, I drove. No destination in mind. I ended up on the west side, near the boardwalk. The one from the photo she left me. The one where we'd laughed in the sunlight and fought over ice cream. I parked and walked to the edge, hands deep in my coat pockets. The wind off the lake was brutal, sharp against my cheeks. But I stood there anyway, watching the water churn and spit, like it had something to say. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. I wasn't ready for any more words. Not yet. But I knew, in that moment, I was ready for one thing. To stop bleeding from something I didn't cause. To start choosing what came next, instead of reliving what came before. The waves crashed harder. I didn't move. Let the cold soak in. Let it remind me I was still alive. And maybe, just maybe, still capable of love. I stayed by the lake until my fingers went numb and the wind made my eyes water. Then I walked back to the car, opened the door, and just sat there with the engine off. The silence felt heavier inside the car than it did outside. Like I was finally sealed in with myself. I didn't go home right away. I drove down side streets I hadn't been on in years. Past an old bakery that used to smell like vanilla and cinnamon rolls, now boarded up. Past a record store that still had faded posters in the window, Fleetwood Mac, Springsteen, Meat Loaf. I pulled into a gas station around 11:30. The kind that hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. Fluorescent lights buzzing. One flickering. The cashier inside looked half asleep behind the counter, watching some late-night talk show with the sound off. I went in and bought a coffee and a pack of gum I didn't need. The coffee was burnt. Bitter. Perfect. I sat in the parking lot sipping it, staring at my hands on the steering wheel. They looked older than they used to. More veins. More spots. My nails uneven. Like everything else lately, messy but still working. I checked my phone. Nothing from Julie. Nothing from the kids. Just a weather alert about frost in the morning. I went home. Didn't bother turning on the lights when I got there. Let the dark follow me through the house. Upstairs, I stood in the doorway of what used to be our daughter's room. The twin bed still had a quilt her grandmother made. The walls were lined with old ribbons, dusty now. She hadn't slept in there for years. But sometimes, I stood there anyway, like I expected time to collapse and take me back. That night, I finally read the rest of the notebook. Every page. Start to finish. She'd written about everything. The affair. The guilt. The first night it happened, after too much wine and not enough honesty. The second time, because I didn't stop at the first. The months of pretending. The way she justified it to herself, telling herself it was about connection, not sex. She talked about how lonely she'd felt. How she tried to tell me, in her way, with hints and questions and gestures I probably missed. She admitted she'd deleted messages before. Not just the ones I found. Others. Then one entry stopped me cold. He told me he loved me. I told him I didn't. I think that's when I realized what I'd really done. She'd ended things. Before I found out. That was in one of the later entries. I couldn't breathe when it was happening, and now I can't breathe without knowing it happened. I miss who we were. I miss your stupid slippers. I miss you falling asleep during movies and lying about it. I miss Sunday grocery trips and your humming when you cooked eggs. I miss your presence in the room like I miss air. I closed the book and set it on the couch beside me. Then I cried. Not the broken kind I'd let out the night I found the texts. This was quieter. Sadder. The kind that leaks out slow and doesn't stop when you want it to. It was like grieving someone who wasn't dead. The next morning, I called Mitch. He picked up on the second ring. Well damn, he said. I figured you'd gone monk mode by now. Still got the boat? I asked. You damn right I do. I'm coming. The lake was calm. We didn't say much for the first hour. Just sat with our lines in the water and the soft creak of the boat reminding us we weren't on land. He handed me a beer. We drank. The sun climbed higher. Eventually he said, "You thinking about letting her back in?" I nodded. Thinking about what that even means. You know she's not the same woman. I know. And you're not the same man. I looked out at the water. Maybe that's the point. He squinted. You think she's sorry? I know she is. Then the question ain't whether she's sorry. The question's whether you want to rebuild something new with someone who once tore you down. I don't know. That's honest, he said. Don't force it. But don't freeze it either. Life ain't long enough for unfinished decisions. We fished for another hour. Caught nothing. Didn't matter. The silence between us felt better than the noise I'd been living with. When I got home, I opened the drawer where I kept my spare keys. Found the envelope Julie had left the first time. With a note about the motel. I read it again. Same words. But they felt different now. Less like a knife. More like a scar. Still ugly. Still sore. But no longer bleeding. I stood in the hallway, the late afternoon sun painting gold streaks across the hardwood. I thought about calling her. I thought about driving out to that little house with the dog and the greenhouse and knocking on the door. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I went outside and raked the leaves. One strip of yard at a time. Not because it needed it. But because sometimes, the work you do with your hands is the only way to quiet the noise in your chest. 3 weeks passed before I saw her again. Not because I was avoiding her. Not exactly. I think I just needed to sit with myself first. To be in my own company long enough to know if I could stand it. If I could hear my own thoughts without wanting to crawl out of my skin. But that Sunday, I woke up and something felt different. The air was still cold. The usual ache in my knees was there. But when I looked in the mirror while brushing my teeth, I didn't flinch at my reflection. That was new. I put on my jacket. Grabbed the keys. I didn't even text her first. I drove out toward Bayfield, where she'd said the house was. I hadn't used the GPS, I remembered the directions from that old note she left. As I pulled into the gravel driveway, the sun came out from behind the clouds like it had been waiting for permission. The house was small. White. Weathered porch. Wind chimes swaying lazily. There were pots of lavender and basil on the steps, and a fat golden retriever sleeping in a sunbeam by the screen door. It lifted its head when it heard my truck, then flopped back down like, not my problem. I knocked once. The door creaked open slowly. She stood there barefoot, wearing an oversized navy sweater that hung just past her hips. Her hair was tied up. No makeup. No mask. She looked at me like she was waiting for me to vanish. "Hey," I said. "Hey." We stared at each other for a long second. It wasn't tense. It wasn't easy, either. But it was real. "Can I come in?" I asked. She nodded, stepping aside. Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and something baking. Probably bread. Or cookies. There was a record playing quietly in the background, Fleetwood Mac. Silver Springs. Her favorite. We sat at a small wooden table near the window. A pot of tea sat in the middle, still steaming. 2 mugs. Like she'd known I might come. "I wasn't sure if you'd ever," she started, but stopped. "I almost didn't," I said. She looked down at her hands. There was a thin scar across her thumb I'd never noticed before. Or maybe I had, but never asked. "I didn't want you to feel like I was forcing anything." "You didn't," I said. "You gave me space. I just didn't know what to do with it." She gave a soft laugh. The kind that barely makes sound. "I've been talking to Marlene," she said. "The woman who owns the house. She's been divorced twice. Says the secret to surviving heartbreak is learning how to grocery shop alone without crying." I raised an eyebrow. "She's not wrong," I muttered. Julie looked up at me. "I'm sorry, Rick. I know you've read the letters. But I need to say it to your face." I didn't say anything. Just let her speak. I was lonely. I felt invisible. And instead of saying something, I made a choice that shattered everything we built. I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were. I want a chance to show you who I've become. I stuttered her. The way her fingers fidgeted with the mug. The small line between her brows that deepened when she was scared. "I don't hate you," I said. She exhaled, shoulders sagging. "But I'm still angry," I added. "And confused. Some days I want to call you. Other days I want to disappear." She nodded slowly. "That makes sense. I don't know if I can ever trust you like before." She met my eyes. "I don't expect you to. I just want a chance to earn what I can. Even if it's different than before." We sat in silence. Not awkward, just heavy. "I brought something," I said finally. She looked surprised. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the photograph. The one of us on the boardwalk. I'd framed it. Simple wooden frame. Nothing fancy. I didn't want it sitting on the mantel anymore, I said. It felt like it was waiting. She took it with both hands, like it was fragile. Like touching it too fast might break it. I remember that day, she said. You dropped your ice cream and tried to steal mine. You shoved me, I said. She smiled. I kept it because that version of us still matters, I told her. Not as something to get back to, but something to build from. Julie stood slowly, walked to a bookshelf near the fireplace, and placed the photo right in the center. Then she turned back to me. Do you want to stay for dinner? I hesitated. I didn't bring anything. I've got frozen pizza and wine that tastes like grape juice. I smiled. That's how you always liked it. She nodded. I still do. I stood. Took off my coat. You got beer? She laughed. Fridge. Bottom shelf. I followed her into the kitchen. And for the first time in months, the silence between us didn't feel like a wall. It felt like a hallway. Leading somewhere. The pizza was burnt around the edges. She forgot to set a timer and we both laughed when the smoke alarm chirped once, then gave up. We opened the windows, and I waved a dish towel at the ceiling like I had a dozen times before. The kitchen filled with cool autumn air and the scent of melted cheese and blackened crust. She handed me a beer from the fridge. Miller Lite. I used to complain it tasted like river water. I didn't this time. We sat at the small kitchen table with our plates, two mismatched chairs, and the wine bottle between us. She poured herself a glass, barely half full. This feels surreal, she said, looking around. Like I'm in someone else's movie. You always said our life felt like a slow documentary. Too many lingering shots, she murmured. And not enough explosions. She looked at me, half smiling. Oh, I think we got our explosion. We ate in silence for a bit. Her foot brushed mine under the table. Neither of us moved. After dinner, I helped her rinse the dishes. The faucet whined slightly when she turned it too hard. She muttered something about fixing it. I said nothing. The silence between us had changed. It wasn't jagged anymore. It was tentative. Curious. She offered me the couch. I told her I'd sleep in the guest room. She nodded. There was a stack of old blankets folded on the bed. The room was tidy. Lived in. On the nightstand, I noticed a photo of her and our daughter, one I didn't recognize. It was from last year, probably. They were smiling under a tree, bundled up, cheeks red from the cold. I turned out the light but couldn't sleep. The mattress creaked every time I shifted. My mind kept replaying things. Her letters. Her voice. Her face the day I first confronted her. My own face in the mirror afterward. The sound of that motel door slamming shut in my memory. And yet here I was. Under a stranger's roof that somehow still smelled like her perfume. I got up around 2 a.m. and walked into the kitchen to get water. She was already there. Leaning against the counter, barefoot, wearing a thin grey sleep shirt that hung off one shoulder. Her hair was down. No words. Just her. Real. Unfiltered. We froze. Can't sleep, she asked softly. I shook my head. She reached into a cabinet and pulled down a second glass. Filled it. Handed it to me. When our fingers touched, something clicked. Not like before. Not romance. Not lust. It was recognition. Of everything we'd lost. Everything that might come next. I think about that night, she said, staring out the window above the sink. I didn't ask which one. I kept hoping you'd scream at me, she continued. I deserved it. Instead, you just disappeared inside yourself. I didn't know how to scream, I said. All I knew how to do was remember. She turned to look at me. Her eyes tired, but clear. Do you think we have a chance? Really? I didn't answer right away. I think we have a starting point, I said finally. But I don't know where it leads. She nodded. That's more than I expected. We stood there for a while, not speaking. Eventually I said, I want to take it slow. Her lips curved gently. I want to earn slow. I left early the next morning. She hugged me at the door. It wasn't long. It wasn't awkward. It was just honest. I drove home with the windows down. The sun was rising behind the trees, painting everything in gold. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in the truck for a few minutes before going inside. The house smelled like dust and old laundry. The usual. But I didn't hate it. Not anymore. I walked into the living room and picked up the notebook she'd left me weeks ago. Sat down. Turned to the back page. Blank. I grabbed a pen. Wrote the date. Then I wrote. I don't know if forgiveness is a destination or a direction. But today, I turned toward something. Maybe you did too. I closed the book and set it down. Went into the kitchen. Made coffee. Toast burned. Butter melted too fast. And everything was okay. Because I was still here. Still choosing. And somehow, that was enough.